Anxiety. I really want to get more used to doing video because doing a script a little bit hard for me. Talking to a video feels a little bit robotic, but I want to feel natural because I feel like I have a gift to give to the world. Right now, drinking some decaf coffee. I tried doing it on a pour over, but I ground it a little bit too fine. I'm used to making espresso. Anxiety is an interesting one. I think it shows up for a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. And in a bite size, the way at least I'm thinking about it now is that anxiety has to do with having a really good imagination, which is often a gift for people. The downside of it is when we have a higher sensitivity oftentimes. We've had a more imaginative, creative way that we interact with the world, with life, and it maybe gives us a lot of our gifts. Maybe we're creatives, maybe we're drawers. Maybe the way that we interact with people has to do with a lot of sensitivity. Anxiety has to do with a fear. Maybe it doesn't even matter what fear it is, but it connected something to our past. Maybe a trauma that we experienced. Maybe it was not being accepted by others, never feeling enough for our parents, or just an incident. Something happened when we were swimming in the ocean. We got into a predicament and got locked in a room on accident and didn't know when we'd get out. Those things tend to live with us. They're kind of unresolved cycles that got caught in our story. And then when we come across something that has some sort of parallels, our body usually held the memory of those past events, even in ways that we're not cognitively thinking about. And then our great imagination mixed with our awareness of how this event has parallel with it, broadcast some sort of worst case scenario. And all we are left feeling is anxious, worried, a sense of dread, a sense of difficulty. Even in making this video, I felt some anxiety, some resistance. Because anytime we put something out there, it's always going to fall short of addressing all the intricacies that people have. And as a mental health therapist, I've come across a lot of different people who, even in the way that they see the world, experience the world, things that they've seen, the ways that they're wired, were different than preconceptions that I had. And so as I think about what causes anxiety, I can't speak to every single way that anxiety is created for every single person. Nor can I say how it lives in every single body. Sometimes it's held in the shoulder. Sometimes we have headaches. Sometimes it just is a gut knot. Sometimes it's shortness of breath. And I think that there's oftentimes clusters of ways that it shows up, but I do want to try to simplify things in ways that are helpful. So when I think about anxiety, I do want to go back to the simplest form of it, is saying that we're imagining a future situation that could happen that causes a sense of worry, dread, or fear. If we can understand that, then we can, when we in the moment feel the anxiety come, we can start to ask ourselves good questions. And we can ask ourselves, does this feel connected to the single moment, or does this feel connected to something that's bigger? And once we have the answer to that, maybe a situation would be, I guess a recent one that I encountered, a client of mine, when they were doing a calculus math problem in university, started to feel like the problem was very complicated. It was more than they could understand. And they started to have a panic attack-ish, not fully, but with the feelings of, I'm bad at math. If I'm bad at math, then I'm not going to be able to do these other courses that are important for this future career. That's really important to me. And people are going to think I'm stupid. Other people, this math is easy for them. Why isn't it easy for me? I'm not going to succeed. And it quickly snowballed. But sometimes we can have anxiety where maybe we feel trapped, where we're just like, I feel like I understand this problem. I can't figure out this one part, and it's driving me crazy. And when we understand, is it about this moment, or is it something that I am bringing into my future and saying how important this is, connected to my past narratives of I'm a terrible math student because my parents would yell at me and tell me how stupid I was and projected a bunch of things on me. And once we know that, we then can address it in different ways. If we have the time, we can journal about it, do all the things. But what I encourage you to not do is just ignore it. Oftentimes we try to ignore and avoid only. I'm not saying that all coping mechanisms are bad, not at all. Avoiding is a very valid strategy. But I think where we get caught up is we often avoid it and don't ever set up a strategy to come back to it or address it. And that's where I find is really important and empowering for people. So if you're able to ask yourself the question, is this about this current moment or is this something that's bigger? That kind of gives you maybe a framework of which direction to go. If it's bigger and you have the time for it, maybe you can start to think about what is this connected to? Maybe it is connected to past events where people held you bad, projected things on you, accused you of different things. It brings up memories that made you feel inadequate or damaged or whatever. And with that, we can talk about what to do with trauma. You can also reach out to me. We could talk about how maybe something like EMDR might be helpful to help your body and mind synthesize those past events so you don't have to keep living those past events in the current moment. Past memories can stay in the past, and the way that your mind and body could have interpreted that time with your present intelligence can be your future experience. But it might be something to just note and become aware of. This is connected to these deeper, bigger issues of other people projecting, or maybe even this insecurity I have about myself that I don't know what to do with. Or if it's more of an acute, this is just here and now, we can come up with a strategy of sometimes not understanding things overwhelms me. And in that, I need to take a step back because my brain just feels full. I feel stuck, and then my body goes into fight and flight. And once we start to go into that fight, flight, freeze, faint, fawn, common survival strategies. But when we feel anxiety, our body goes into that, and then it becomes harder for our body to access some of our neural pathways and other things that are just helpful for getting through the situation. So we can start to do other things like take a breath. And it might sound pithy, but the interesting thing about breathing is that it's one of the autonomic systems that we have in our body, heart beating, digestion, that we actually have control of. And it's actually a really nice one to have control of because as we breathe in, our heartbeat increases, and we breathe out, our heartbeat decreases. So we actually have a little bit of control over letting our body know that we're in you'll hear the word sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system situation. Parasympathetic essentially means that you're in a calm state. Sympathetic means that you're in an activated state. Your body's on alert. I like to think about it as you're receiving the sympathy, the feelings from the situation that's going on. So when you relax your breath, when you breathe a little bit longer out than you breathe in, it tells your body, I'm not in fight and flight. And we can start to regain control over those really fast, active thoughts that are occurring. So if we can ask ourselves that question, is this connected to a bigger thing or an immediate, we can start to have some action. So it's an immediate thing. We can take a breath. We can step away from it for a second. We can get refreshed. We can call a friend. We can do some jumping jacks. Actually, getting movement in our body can actually be so helpful to just restarting our nervous system and letting us get back to what actually is our thoughts that we want to have for this situation. If it's a bigger thing, then that's where it gets a little bit more difficult. It's intrinsically a little bit more complex. But one thing that can be really helpful is actually to just note that it is a bigger thing. And this is maybe connected to part of our story that we've had for a long time. And if it's involving someone else, we can let them know, like, hey, something bigger is showing up right now, and I need a minute. And we can write down maybe what that bigger theme is. And we could say, hey, I'm going to address this, and I see it, but I don't have the time and ability to see it today. So I'm going to put this on hold for a moment. I'm going to put this in a box until I can talk to my therapist or until I can get to a place where I can journal more about it. It's important to not just shove it away, ignore it, avoid it, because our body holds it anyways and it will keep coming back. But when we can have curiosity about ourselves, I think that's number one, have curiosity about ourselves, be able to see maybe insight into what it is, and then be able to do something that gives us a sense of control, and not control in a way of trying to change it, but control in the way of making a choice that I see it, I'm going to take care of it, I'm going to attend to what is here. And right now isn't the circumstance that I want to do that in or can do that in. So I'm going to put it here until it's more appropriate and I am able to do that. And so those are the two strategies I think of at first when I hear people dealing with anxiety. And that would be, in the moment that you're feeling anxious, ask yourself the question, is this about the current moment or is something bigger coming up? And from there, go down the pathways of this, then that. So if it is about the current moment, then this is what I'm going to do. If it's something bigger, then this is what I'm going to do. And over time, you will become a lot more aware of both where it's coming from and what you need for the type of anxiety. And you deserve to be free of the underlying things that are causing that anxiety to come up, because it does stop you from being able to respond. And it's a lot easier to just feel reactive. And I want you to be able to feel reactive. It's important, especially in this time where there's so much media, there's so much input that is coming at us all the time. I hear it often just how anxiety producing life can be. And so I think it's really important that we get really good at being able to do this. Otherwise, we'll be crippled and held back from the potential that we can have for ourselves. And also, I think the gifts that the world really needs in order to be well. So that's my ramblings on anxiety a little bit. I hope that it was helpful to maybe understand where anxiety is coming from, what's going on a little bit in the brain and body, what we can do in a simple strategy to address it, and what might need a little bit more help and attentiveness, and what might need to address it in the moment so that we can be okay, and that over time our brain will actually start to rewrite those neural networks and we'll start to have less anxiety. I have a lot more thoughts about this. Please ask any questions that you want. I would love to respond, help you out in any way I can, and I'll talk to you soon. All right, take care.